Hello and welcome to Joy of Books with me, Miss Joy. Today's offering is John Buchan's novel, The 39 Steps. Released in 1915 and totaling 253 pages, the book is a very early spy novel. Sharing his views on the book today is author and teacher TC. So TC, I am really interested in hearing your views on this classic thriller.
Thank you, Miss Joy. Yes, The 39 Steps is a really good book, and I enjoyed reading it. I actually revisited this book after about 20 or 25 years since the last time I read it. I recall that the actual book was written just after the outbreak of World War One, and it was very popular in its day. Of course, you can imagine the soldiers in the trenches of northern France reading this book and sharing the tales of that book with each other. So I can see that this book has value, certainly in terms of culture and history. It's about this character called Richard Hannay, an adventurer, and he returns from South Africa where he was establishing his wealth through mining. He's in London, although he's not really enjoying London as much as you would expect. He finds it a little bit boring. So that's the backdrop really for this great story. He lives in this block of apartments at Portland Place in London, and there's another character who also lives there, a character called Scudder. And this Scudder appears in Hannay's apartment one evening when he returns from his strolls in the boring London streets, according to him. And this Scudder is very interesting because he has faked his own death, which is quite a bizarre thing to do, but he does this because he's worried about his life. He reveals this conspiracy that he's uncovered, which is trying to provoke a world war by assassinating a Greek prime minister, Karylides. Hannay is a little bit sceptical, as you would be, when finding somebody like Scudder in your apartment when you return home. He goes out, mulls it over, returns to find Scudder in his apartment, and he's been knifed to death. Hannay, fearing for his own safety and life, of course with a mistrust of the police and the authorities, finding a dead body in his apartment, he actually goes on the run to Scotland, not just from the police, but also, of course, from whoever Scudder deems to have been after him because of the conspiracy. So there begins a game of cat and mouse. He flees to North Scotland, to the Highlands, and what follows is 15 chapters of innocent man on the run, thrilling tales. I mean, it's a little bit unbelievable in places, a little bit far-fetched, so you do have to suspend your disbelief a little bit to really fully enjoy the book. Of course, the events and the way he's repeatedly lucky to escape suspicion and capture is quite baffling at times, but certainly a rip-roaring yarn for anybody. And of course, the book itself was a huge influence on people like Alfred Hitchcock. I'm thinking of his film North by Northwest. And of course, in the 39 Steps, there is a small plane that is kind of searching for Hannay, the main character, and searching him on these glorious Scottish hills. And I can see where Hitchcock would have taken inspiration from for a lot of his movies. And indeed, Hollywood, when you think of films like The Fugitive, Harrison Ford, these would all be based on this idea of an innocent man who is on the run. And that's a storyline that will continue to reoccur, I'm sure. So I really enjoyed the book. Of course, it's a little dated now, and there will be books that have passed it and superseded that. I have no doubt about that. I can see that in the time it was produced, it's a quality read, good value for money, certainly in those days. And the storyline would in those days have represented quite a lot of excitement and escapism, I would imagine, to the reader, as it would in the modern day as well, for sure. Quite nice to read a book without the idea of computers and AI and everything else. It's a good old-fashioned story for sure. Yeah, in terms of the writing style, it's well written, it's quite detailed, lots of good descriptions. Some might argue a little bit too vivid in terms of descriptions of the Scottish countryside, for example, but certainly there's a lot in there to interest any reader. The dialogue is quite sharp and doesn't bog the book down in any way. And it's a good yarn, it's a good story, and I would certainly recommend the book to anybody considering this.
Well, thank you very much for your review of the book, Tissy. It sounds like a very interesting read. The 39 Steps by John Buchan is available from all good book outlets. Thank you for joining me, and please remember to like and subscribe.